I'm from Bangalore in India. I was born in a small town called Udupi, which is where my grandfather was a pastor and the house father of a hostel. My parents had already moved to Bangalore before I was born, so I was born in Udupi but grew up in the city of Bangalore. I grew up in a family where there was a lot of involvement in the church, not just my grandfather who was a pastor and my grandmother who played a major role in my grandfather's ministry from my mother's side, but two of my uncles were pastors, theologians, professors. After school and after my degree, I went to the United Theological College in Bangalore. I then, following the completion of my Bachelor of Divinity, the equivalent of the MDiv, I was sent out to my very first call, where I served 5 rural congregations. A year later, that would be in May 1985, I was ordained a deacon of the Church of South India. And a year later, that's May 1986, I was ordained presbyter of the Church of South India. After I served for 2 years in this rural parish with 5 congregations, I served for another 2 years as the presbyter assisting in a very large urban congregation. And from there I was invited back to the seminary where I had studied to join the faculty as a junior lecturer. So I began my career as a theological educator in June 1988, serving at the United Theological College, Bangalore, where I had studied and now I was teaching there. I then went on to do my Master of Theology, a 2-year advanced degree at the Orthodox Theological Seminary in Kottayam. The reason why I went there was I had decided, and the college had also wanted, someone who had specialized in the early church, the so-called patristic period, the study of the fathers of the church. And there we had wonderful priests, scholars from the Syriac Orthodox tradition. I wrote my master's dissertation on the unity of the church in Cyprian of Carthage. Went back to the United Theological College between 91 and 92 and taught as a lecturer for a year. Then went to Germany to begin my doctoral studies. I completed my doctorate at the University of Hamburg in early 1997. I wrote a dissertation on the baptismal controversy in the work and writings of Cyprian of Carthage. Rejoined the faculty of the United Theological College in June 1997. The United Theological College has been a college which from its foundation in 1910 has been an ecumenical college. We have students from all confessional families, Orthodox, Protestant, Methodists and Anglicans and the Church of South India, the Church of North India, the Marthoma Church, all kinds of Baptist traditions, brethren. We also have students from the Pentecostal churches, India Pentecostal Church, Assemblies of God, Sharon Fellowship. There's even a group called the Philadelphia congregation or Philadelphia Church. We also have Roman Catholic students and Roman Catholic faculty members. Students have come for the special programs. There's also a training for YMCA secretaries. But I was in this ecumenical college where we had Orthodox, Protestants, Catholics, Pentecostals all together in one campus, primarily residential. I had colleagues from all these faith traditions. We also had a number of international students and visiting professors from all over the world. I was also a student of Dr. J. Paul Rajashekar, who taught me shortly after he returned to India following his doctorate at the University of Iowa. I did Life and Thought of Martin Luther with him. I did Introduction to Indian Christian Theology with him, and we did keep in touch after he left this college to first go to Geneva as the dialogue secretary within the Lutheran World Federation, and then in 1991 at the Lutheran Theological Seminary in Philadelphia. The United Theological College, Bangalore, and the Lutheran Theological Seminary at Philadelphia have had a very warm relationship down the years. A number of faculty members from LTSP have taught at Bangalore, including Dr. Bob Robinson, Dr. Phil Cray, Dr. Paul Rajshekar himself returned as a visiting professor. LTSP has received visiting professors from Bangalore, including the present principal of UTC, Dr. John Samuel Raj. And we have had exchange students going in both directions. In fact, one of my students when I was in Bangalore was Greg Huth, who spent a whole semester with us in Bangalore. So I knew about the Lutheran Theological Seminary in Philadelphia, but it was a matter of pride, and I must say I was also surprised to receive a message saying that there was a targeted search for the position of the Professor of Mission and Cultures, and that my name had been raised in connection with this. And as I said, this came rather unexpectedly. I must say I was flattered too. And I came here in, if I remember right, October 2006, gave a lecture, met the faculty, met various members of the community, including the students, and I was offered the position. And so we relocated, came here in the middle of 2007, and I began teaching with fall semester 2007. We live on the campus. It's been a wonderful opportunity to have now spent six and a half years at the seminary. So that's a little bit about my background. As I said, I'm an ordained minister of the Church of South India. I have experience both in rural and urban congregations. Right through my teaching career in Bangalore, I served as the honorary associate pastor of a number of congregations which had need of my services. In the United States, I've continued to keep in touch with a variety and range of worshiping communities, ranging from ethnic Asian, South Asian communities to congregations in all kinds of situations, including African American congregations. And so I've tried to cultivate relationships with a variety and range of pastors and congregations, and have benefited immensely from this great variety and range of worship experiences. One of the things that struck me right from my first visit, that there was so much in common between the experiences I had had up to that point in India and what lay ahead of me in the United States. The similarities even extend to the fact that in Bangalore, as you enter the campus, there's a large lawn in the middle around which there are the various buildings. And when you come into the LTSP campus, there is again a central, it's not a round one, it's more rectangular, but there is a lawn and the buildings are all around. Similarities also extend to the fact that people live on campus, there's a community, but also in terms of the diversity of the faculty and the student body. Of course, we are a Lutheran seminary, grounded and rooted in the Lutheran tradition, but with this incredible ecumenical hospitality and openness, which has been recognized, and the fact that my colleagues come from so many different traditions and that I have students from such a wide range of traditions brings back a wonderful sense of familiarity, that all of us we can disagree on so many issues, even some fundamental issues like baptism, but nevertheless have a common commitment to what is expected of us as companions and servants and disciples of Jesus. There are challenges, but all challenges for theological education bring their own opportunities. What are some of the challenges? There was a time when churches and denominations took responsibility rather early on in a person's career, identifying people, preparing them, accompanying them through the seminary, and then finding a place for them to work. And this accompaniment, to a large extent, also included a financial accompaniment. Within the so-called mainline Protestant churches, to quite a large extent, this model is no longer a viable model. Not that the churches have abdicated their responsibilities, they still identify and support and encourage and accompany students, but more and more churches, denominations, congregations find it difficult to pay for and support financially theological students. So one of the challenges that we face is continuing to keep the vision and the dream alive. The dream of young people, older people, people at various stages in their career to serve either the ministry of word and sacrament or the ministry of word and service, the multiple ways in which they serve without being straddled by an extravagant debt at the end of the process. How best can we recapture a vision whereby churches, congregations, bodies of the church, denominations own their own, in the sense that they accompany them not just through the various hoops that people have to jump through in order to reach a certain stage, but also boost them through infusion of generous grants and support systems. Our own philanthropy office has recognized this, and various people are working very hard. We have something called Project Sponsor. We have donors who are willing to give money specifically for theological education. But that's a challenge. How can we, in one sense, liberate our students from the crushing burden of debt to give off their full potential, both as seminary students and after their studies as workers in the wider church and in society? So I would identify that as one major challenge. And as the dean, I'm in a number of conversations with our friends from the philanthropy office, with our friends from admissions, with our friends from financial aid, with our friends from student services, to see how best we can be of assistance to our students. And this is not a question just for me, it's a broader question in the church. And it's not just the Association of Theological Schools or the accrediting agencies, but it's a wider societal issue. So that would certainly be one. But at the same time, I have to say, I'm encouraged that what seems to be possible limitations, limiting the accessibility to theological education, has not proved to be a limitation, because through possible limitations, limitless possibilities emerge. And I think our students have glimpsed the limitless possibilities of serving faithfully in a broken and messy world, and to continue to encourage people to recognize the limitless possibilities that a theological education would bring them. That's again part of what I'm trying my best to be encouraging, fostering, mentoring, and also learning from wider currents in church and society, and funneling those in collaboration with my colleagues into the task of theological education. This seminary at one stage in its history, prided itself in being inconspicuous behind high walls in what was then a suburb of Philadelphia, a group of people doing their own thing with very little interaction with the world around them. Of course, they were grounded in the denomination and what was going on, but wider currents in American society that seemed to pass this seminary by. But luckily for us, there were pioneers, visionaries who saw that this could not continue, and part of that was not an internal thing, it was an external thing. The African American community, which was growing in leaps and bounds all down Germantown Avenue and beyond, 35, 40 years ago, there was a felt need for trained and educated clergy, many of whom were already serving as leaders and as clergy persons, but they needed a certain extra ability to navigate the complexities of biblical interpretation, to gain an understanding for the history of the church, to get deeper skills in counseling and church administration, to understand the breadth and depth and richness of Christian theology. And it's almost become an urban legend, but in this case it's true. Among the African American churches whom we serve today, there's a slogan: we knocked at many doors. Everyone else said no. Lutheran said yes. That yes, and the willingness of our friends from the African American community and its leadership to embrace the possibilities that this seminary represented expanded the vision of the seminary in dramatic ways. We have done all kinds of things, the most important being to recognize that just outside our doors and our gates and beyond the walls is a rich and vibrant world. It's a world where there is violence and pain. It's a world that at some levels is broken. It's a world where there's a lot of promise and potential. It's a world of multiple denominations and congregations. It's a world of a range of world faiths all around us. And we recognized through the work, as I said, done by some far-seeing and far-sighted faculty members, that what lay outside the seminary had an important role to play in how we redefine ourselves, reshape our curriculum. And this process has gone on for a long time now, 30, 35, even 40 years, whereby we now recognize that the United States of America, which for many, many years almost seemed monolithic in terms of religious identity, has now become the world's most religiously diverse country. We have recognized that the range and variety of denominations, including denominations which have come with immigrants to this country, are not going away, but that we have to understand the unity of the church in a totally different way. We have to understand that people in the places where they live, the places where they work, the places where children go to school, even the places where they worship, are becoming increasingly diverse. And so this seminary, in its latest new curriculum, which is now called the Flexible, Affordable and Relevant Curriculum, the FAR curriculum, which was implemented after a long time of planning and preparation from fall semester 2013, that an experiential component become part and parcel of every single course that is done here. In other words, a course may appear to be extremely theoretical, But no, even a course which on paper appears theoretical has to have an experiential component. What is learned here is impacted by what happens out there, and what happens here should be tested and refined against what is happening out there. And so the reconfiguring of this seminary with its emphasis on public theology at multiple levels in terms of its mission, its ministry, and its vision has made it possible to have all kinds of programs: Latino, Latina, urban, metro, multicultural, interreligious, interfaith, the Master of Arts in Public Leadership, research being done by individual professors, including Dr. Katie Day, whose book Faith on the Avenue has just been released by Oxford University Press, things that have been done by colleagues and friends regarding gun violence, the fact that we continue to listen to our alum and all that they experience in the field and tell us about where they are and where the congregations are and where their ministries are taking them, where their agencies are taking them. This is a seminary in ferment. Public theology is never static, and the seminary is not static. In that sense, it's a pleasure to be part of a dynamic, forward-thinking seminary, which has as its core our mission to train and educate public leaders for public mission in a public church. One of the great gains of the ecumenical movement is the ability of churches to recognize that history is never neat, that history is far more complex than that. And one of the most important realities in the life of the church happened almost exactly 500 years ago, when a Catholic monk decided to ask some questions. And those questions remain with us. That monk set in motion all kinds of events, some of which led to the formation of churches which bear his name, and a broader denominational movement which bears his name, that is to say, Lutheran and Luther. However, the work of that monk is far bigger than the Lutheran churches, and that has been recognized by denominations across the spectrum. It's not just the Roman Catholic Church, which through the joint declaration on justification recognized that one of the points that he made, one of the central points that he made, was central not just to the Protestant churches, but for the church as such. His work has been important even for those who have no direct genealogy with the Lutheran churches from the time of the Reformation, mainly the Orthodox churches and even the Pentecostal churches. But nevertheless, what we have recognized is that historically it is accurate that we are a Lutheran seminary with a proud and long history beginning in 1864. We'll shortly be celebrating our 150th anniversary, and we are proud of that rich legacy, which has led to so much work in terms, not just in terms of research and writing, but in terms of sustaining and enabling a variety and range of congregations and social services all over this country and abroad. But the Lutheran vision is not limited to the Lutheran churches, and this seminary has recognized that. This is too good a matter to be confined within this system, and that vision is being shared with ecumenical partners and friends They bring their own visions, their dreams, their histories, their complexities, their pain, their frustrations. But all this is put into good service. We continue to be a seminary which celebrates, affirms, underlines what happened 500 years ago and continues to happen today. But at the same time recognize that our rootedness in the tradition has also led us to this welcoming openness, whereby our deepest convictions are not kept to ourselves, but are brought into fruitful and creative, interactive, constructive dialogue with people from a variety of traditions. And this vision can only be strengthened as we become more rooted and more open in the respective traditions to which we belong at the present time. If all that defines the church is numbers, is money, then we've done something wrong, almost from the beginning. If the church is defined in one sense by its recognition of the faithful companion, of faithful disciples, of the faithful followers, then even though numbers and money and the bottom line may all be important, it should be put into a broader perspective. If the church is truly the bride of Christ, then we have to recognize that it's not our church, but God's church. And if it is God's church in that sense, all we can do is to be prudent stewards, wise no doubt, pragmatic no doubt, but without losing that element of trust and confidence and hope and faith. This may lead to difficult decisions. I'm not doubting that. It may lead to the reality of coming to terms with physical decline, deteriorating buildings, inability to sustain the ministries of the church, and paying for leaders and pastors, and supporting outreach and world mission and disaster relief. All this may be there and is certainly there. But how can we hope in the midst of what seemed to be difficult situation? How can we continue to love and do what we have always done best, and that is to be the ever generous and always ready church? How do we continue to listen to what the Spirit is saying to the churches? Yes, there are things which concern all of us. It's true. We do spend times with facts and figures and people and numbers and finances and dollars and dimes and cents, and all these things are true. But all that has to be put in the perspective of a broader vision, that God has never left God's self without witnesses, and we need to continue to witness to this love of God for all creation. Every seminary offers the possibility of ideas and people germinating and growing. A seminary is a seed bed. It's a seed bed of people. It's a seed bed of the church. It's a seed bed of ideas. And in that sense, I hope that our 150th anniversary celebrations will mark the possibility of people out there and people here of rediscovering what it means to be church, and rediscovering what it is that the seminary does on behalf of the church, functioning as an incubator, training people to be faithful, an incubator for ideas to germinate, develop and grow, an incubator for experimentation, to take up questions that others may not be prepared to take up, to go in directions that others may not want us to go, but nevertheless in faithfulness, continuing to explore what it means to be faithful to the vision that we have inherited. And so 150 years is a great time to pause, to give thanks for all that has been, for the pioneers who made us what we are, for the visionaries who brought us to this point, to the faithful donors and benefactors and supporters who have enabled us to do what we do, for the many alum and the places that they serve, the people whose lives they have impacted, spreading like ripples across the United States and beyond, to give thanks for all this. At the same time, to look forward in hope that the future will open itself to us, that the future will be illumined by the love that has sustained us thus far, and the love that we are confident will take us forward into this unknown future. Unknown to us maybe, but known to God. And because we trust in this loving God, we know that this future will be bright.